Here we go. Okay, pretty easy one. Okay, so this 3 great green cards in this pack is the first thing that I'm noticing. And then 2 deserts and a manolith.
And that makes things really interesting for team draft.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course...
So you're expecting Ambuscade to go second out of this pack, and it only matters a little bit what the first card taken was.
And if you expect the person you're passing to take Ambuscade most likely, then your teammate, they could be taking Ritualist or Puncturing Blow, just basically depending on what they started with. So you may end up in a situation where you kind of need to make sure you cut green and don't try and hook the person to your left too much, because you don't want your teammate 2 seats down to end up green also. Be the 3rd green drafter in a row or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if this pack is going to help with that. It's got 3 solid green cards in it, or at least 2.5, depending on how you feel about the type of deck that Devo's Geo Strength goes into, but I think it's fine. And Torment of Venom is probably independently the most powerful card in the pack.
Yeah, and Devotee of Strength is a card that's deceptive. That's not that much of an aggressive card because it's good in the late game. So it's the exact kind of card a control deck wants, because you can play it on turn 3 and trade it off with their 2 or 3 drop if you're playing against an aggro deck. Or it's a win condition. It's a useful card in stalemates and if the game goes long. So I think Devotee of Strength is just excellent in any type of green deck.
That's largely true, but there is the case where the control decks are often on few win conditions that don't benefit as much from +2/+2. They do have a harder time getting into positions that can leverage that card. Not that it's not good in their decks.
Yeah, but even if it's just blocking or whatever, I mean, it's not target attacking creature gets +2/+2. It's just a good card if you're going to a long game, right? But
yeah, no.
Anyway, Sigrist takes Venom, which is totally reasonable. I don't know if he was thinking about wanting to float the Rhino and the Devotee of Strength so that his teammate gets one. Torrent of Venom, as you said, is the best card in that pack. It's better than Devotee of Strength. So, in regular draft, and especially in team draft, you really can't go wrong taking the best card out of the pack the first couple picks.
Yeah, I agree. There's a pretty good chance the Manolith comes around out of that pack, the first pack that he opened also. Ritualist would be too optimistic to imagine, but he could be set up for a really nice sort of black-green control deck here.
Yeah, and Sifter Worm is great, but he's not green yet. It looks like he's going to take a second Torrent, which I agree with this. This is a pretty clear pick, right?
Oh, yeah. Once you have the first one.
If I were in Siggy seat, I'd have the exact same 3 picks. Would you have done anything differently so far?
No.
So
no, I would have been tempted by the desert pick too, but I think I would have taken the Torment.
Yeah, I mean, in a team draft, I think Torment
and that's
too much
exactly. I was just about to say, if it was not team draft, I think I probably actually do take the desert.
So
Hollow One here surprises me a little bit. How much do you like that card?
Not very much. It looks like me and Siggy are about to diverge.
Yeah.
So
I like
far.
Right, Desert, Manolith, and even Wretch Camel, I think are cards I would consider over Hollow One here.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of Hollow One. Even if you end up a cycling deck, it's an okay card. It's not a great card. You don't have that many 1-mana cyclers. It's just basically a 5-mana 4/4 with cycling, which is cool.
And to be clear, I don't love Razagast, right? But when you are going to have a bunch of swamps in your deck, because basically when you can reliably recycle it when it's in your opening hand, it's such a free roll. And we've got multiple Torment of Venoms here. We're planning on being heavy black.
Yeah. And to be fair to Siggy, that was a pretty weak pack. Like you said,
for sure.
Right is a solid playable in a deck like this, but we don't love it. Most of the time it's 1-mana draw a card, and then the late game it goes and finds your bombs or whatever. But it's not a very good card. Personally, I would have probably took Camel. I tend to draft the deserts pretty highly, and I think it's hard to get quality 2s that are effective. So that's a card that my opinion hasn't changed on. I just think it's a good 2-drop.
Well, and let's not forget, he started double Torment. Camel does a good job of supporting the Torment game plan, since it's it's going to cost them value and make it harder later.
Right, they discard their 1 excess land to the Camel, and then they don't have it to discard to the Torment, and they have to take 3.
Now we see Siggy very easily following up with another torment card. These things do not get worse in multiples. That pick was not close.
Right, I'm sure me and you completely agree on that. That's a windmill slam for a black deck 5th pick.
Oh, yeah. So he's in good shape here. The thing he's going to want to start looking at, obviously, is his curve. The torment cards, ideally, you want to be pressuring your opponent's life total to maximize them. It's not required, but it certainly helps.
Oh, definitely.
Scrapper is certainly a step in that direction.
Yeah, Scrapper's a perfect pick here. It's probably the best card in the pack, and it fits his curve. Like you said, he needs to start drafting some 2s and 3s. Everything you just said is true about the Torments and spot on. You'll play them either way, but you would rather be an aggro deck. They're better in an aggro deck than they are in a control deck. So Kenra Scrapper here, 6th, is just exactly what Siggy was looking for.
Now, this is going to be his pack coming back. There is the Manalith and an On-Color Desert, along with a Manticore Elemental, which is one of the stronger cards we didn't mention from the first pack. It's a solid card, but you don't really want to take it early. It does do a good, again, it supports the Torment cards and making this sort of inevitability of your opponent having to lose more and more life. But, I mean, it's hard to go wrong when you're drafting a grindy control deck, adding the free value of a desert. And in a team draft, you don't want to let this go any later than this. So I think this is a pretty easy pick.
I agree, it's a pretty easy pick. I think that the Deserts are another card, like the Devotee, that's just good in any strategy, aggro or control. Aggro decks lose when they flood out. Control decks are looking to play long games and take advantage of, paying 2 to get rid of excess lands. And it turns Deserts on. I think that the Deserts are just excellent. Honestly, I think I said this on Twitter, but I think there should be common cycling lands in every single set. They should just make that evergreen. Limited would just be way better across the board. That's all they have to do. Just Desert of the Glorified. It doesn't have to be a desert. Just make some generic version of it and put them in every single set.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with you.
So here he looks like he's going to take Rampaging Hippo.
Yeah, that's the first green card that we've seen come back because, as we expected, the Ritualist did not come back out of the... Okay, here's a Feral Prowler, though, which is a fine card for him. It's also a card that's super effective against Torment cards. So even if he doesn't end up green, that's not a bad card to wind up not having to play against. And
so one thing that's interesting, you never know who's what for sure, but you do want to make guesses in team because there is a lot of value in hating the right card, cutting the right color, etc. For Siggy to be tabling Rampaging Hippo out of a pack that only had one other good green card, if I remember correctly, that was the Devotee of Strength pack, I think. And Feral Prowler, I don't even remember what was in that pack, but I don't think it was loaded or anything.
One other green card, I think.
Right. So that tells Siggy that it's pretty likely that nobody that close to his right is playing green. Now, we don't know that for sure, but if you have to infer anything, the other green players are probably to Siggy's left, which means Siggy does want to play green because he might be cutting the person he's passing to. That's the most likely person. And he definitely doesn't want to float a bunch of green that through him that way and possibly have that all end up in the person he's passing to's lap. So Siggy should weight green a little bit. He shouldn't definitely play green. He shouldn't force himself to play green. But seeing green cards late, Siggy should be looking to play green.
Sure, that pack was a little interesting there because I think the Moaning Wall is a very reasonable card that could make his deck if he ends up black-green here. Or even black-red, depending on what it looks like. But he chooses, and I think he thinks that too, but he chooses to take the unconventional tactics off the table, which I cannot blame him for. It's a very powerful card to let go that late, and in particular, I think he's going to end up being a deck that is vulnerable to it. And so I can't argue with taking that off the table.
I agree with everything you just said. If this was an 8-man, that's an easy Moaning Wall, and in a team draft, it's an easy unconventional tactics. You could easily be passing a white player, and you don't want to send them a potentially powerful game-winning type card like that just to pick up a Moaning Wall. That said, Moaning Wall is a lot better than it looks because of cycling. When you take a card that's effective half the time and ineffective half the time, and you give it cycling, that really changes the card's value.
Yep. Something people inevitably have to rediscover again and again every time cycling comes back around.
Right, and when it's a card that's not effective half the time, but is medium all the time, then cycling doesn't change its value much, as we've seen with like the 2 6-mana red creatures that have cycling, because ultimately those are fine cards, but they're nothing special. So the fact that you give somebody the ability to unload them doesn't change anything. It just allows you to cycle them if you have a land light draw or something like that. It's a good thing, but it doesn't change their value wildly. Something like Moaning Wall, that when you play against control is a mulligan, and when you play against aggro is really good, the 40% of the time you cycle it, you're turning almost a dead card into a new card, and the 60% of the time that it's effective, you get to play it. So that really changes the value of a card like that. So what are you going to do here? Wow, look at this pack.
Yeah, this is a very weird pack to open. I mean, you don't have a lot of options, right? The only card that would go into your deck, like the best card for your deck naturally as is like Rune Rat, which, I mean, you're not going to like pass a Kefnet's Sword along, so you can take that, I think.
So the interesting thing when you get into team draft strategy, if that Omnis Sphinx is not in this pack, this is not an interesting pick. You just windmill slam the Kefnet's Last Word, even if you're definitely not going to play it because you can't pass a card like that. Now, Kefnet's Last Word is better than Omnis Sphinx, substantially. But Omnis Sphinx is still a really good blue card to pass to a blue player. Kefnet's Last Word is like a 9, maybe a 10, and Omnis Sphinx is like an 8, maybe a 7. You know what I mean? They're about a 1.5 apart, I would say, on a 1 to 10 made-up scale that doesn't actually mean anything. So, yeah. So I mean, like, you do it.
I think they're just far enough apart for me. They're just far enough apart that I'm not looking at this, I'll just pass 2 blue and, give the next person the same decision. I think you just take the mind control.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in large part because the total value calculation, it matters what you're giving up. And you're giving up a Rune Rat that you're probably a favorite to take.
Exactly.
You're basically not giving up anything.
Yeah, you make a good point. Those cards are close enough that if there were a card that I actively wanted, like a good, like I don't know how good would it have to be, like
not super good. Anything substantial value above replacement, like I would say I would take because
like a desert.
Like a what?
Like a desert.
Yeah, if it was a Black Desert, I think it would be a close pick. I think that's a good line. I don't know what I don't know what I would take if that was Desert of the Glorified, or whatever desert. Yeah, I think it's Glorified. Whatever. But if it was the Black Desert, I think this would be a really close pick. And that might sound weird to people because I'm known for hate drafting and stuff. But I don't like to hate draft Kefnet's Last Words from blue players and give them an Omnis Sphinx and I get nothing. I like to hate draft Kefnet's Last Word from a blue player when there's no other blue cards in the pack and they get nothing. That's what I'm looking to do when I hate draft, So I think if it was a good black card, I think you would take it. I think if it was something like a Black Desert, which is nice but not especially powerful, it's a really close pick. I think that's an excellent card to bring up there.
Yeah, I mean, there's every chance this Kefnet's Last Word this isn't strictly a hate draft, obviously. Siggy's very open, I think, to ending up just kind of a ramp-ish deck if he sees Ritualist, if he sees Gift of Paradise in the next pack. That it could end up being a playable card.
Yeah, and if he just gets hit over the head with blue in this pack, he could also just play black-blue instead of green-black. He could easily be passing to a blue player. He didn't see much blue, so he probably won't get much in pack 3. But, blue's better in this pack, I think, than a Manka. And if he cuts it off and gets and he avoids passing the best card in the pack to the player to his right over and over and over again, that's a way to create value. Now, that's not what's happening here. In this pack, the blue cards are fairly medium right. And the best cards in the pack are Puncturing Blow, Devotee of Strength. There's basically just a bunch of medium cards and a Puncturing Blow in this pack, to be honest.
I could make a case for 3 of these green cards. Like, you like Devotee better? That was the one you mentioned?
So, I mean, they're all close, of course. I agree with that completely. And I think you could basically, you can't really make a case for Bitter Blow Sharpshooters, I don't think. I think that the Excavator is probably overrated, but if you do get a lot of cycling lands and stuff, it can be powerful. I think Devotee is good in all types of decks. And if you're ramp, you could easily need a Beneath the Sands more than a Devotee of Strength.
Siggy chooses to concede to his curve and take the 2-drop Death Touch creature, which is reasonable.
Yeah, and another thing in Team Draft, why that could be a better pick than it looks, it's the only black card that was decent in the pack, so he may be getting a green card to his teammate by doing that. Since there were multiple green cards that were all pretty close, you're not taking a green card from the opponent by taking one of the green cards, not because there's multiple. So there's a better chance that one of them ends up in your teammate's lap if you take the black card. And there's a better chance you can table a green card out of that pack for yourself if you take the black card, because there's 3 to 4 good green cards in the pack.
Yep, absolutely. Taking an Ambiscad here, reasonably easy pick here. The Struggle to Survive might be a little tempting if you still viewed yourself as trying to be a ramp deck, but he doesn't have a lot of that kind of stuff yet. Taking the on-color removal works great with the Rune Rat that he just picked up, pays off that pick a little bit.
Right, and on close picks like that, potentially, one thing to consider is that red is a color you saw kind of late. You saw that Scrapper 6th, and then you saw that Manticore 7th or 8th. So there's a decent chance the person you're passing to can't play it. Not certain, not even close to certain. But, you know, maybe 50-50 they're not red. You know, definitely like a reasonable chance.
Yep, very easy desert here.
Yes, this is an easy desert. You're not scared to pass Burning Fist Minotaur. It's a solid card, but nothing special. The deserts are great. Definitely like how Siggy's drafted this deck. I think the only pick that I really feel strongly about was the Hollow One Wretched Camel. I would have took Wretched Camel there. Every other pick, I think I might have even made exactly the same.
I've been felt pretty medium about Ronus' Stalwarts in my... Now, I agree with this pick here. It does a much better job of supporting the Torment cards than Rune Rat does. I found myself able to take Stalwart lower and lower because such a high percentage of the green decks I draft are just more ramp decks and would rather have like the Rune Rat, basically.
I love that complete analysis. I agree with that. But in this particular case, with 3 Torments, and you're probably going to have to play some more cheaper creatures because it's team draft and you're not going to put together this ramp control masterpiece, I think the Rona Stalwart is good for this particular deck. But I agree with exactly what you just said. It's not a card I even want to play in a lot of my green decks.
See, I'm a little tempted. I haven't actually played much with this card almost at all, but I'm very tempted by this Grizzly Survivor here. I think, he has a decent amount of cycling. And it doesn't, that card's pretty good at pressuring life totals, too. Fills in the curve like he needs. So
here's a pick similar to the first pick of this pack, where you don't want to pass Vizier of the True for Wretched Camel, but since there's an Oketra's Avenger in the pack, hating a Vizier of the True is just not accomplishing enough.
Yeah, and a Dauntless Haven after that, so it's even,
Yeah, you're just taking Vizier, which is up 1 point better than Oketra's Avenger, so a hate there accomplishes nothing. And we see Siggy not even scroll to it, just, take Wretched Camel, because you can't stop a white player in that spot. There's nothing you can really accomplish.
Right. Also, I see this unconventional tactic coming back around, and one went the other direction last time. That's pretty, seeing both of... Okay, so this is pretty suggestive that nobody's really in a position to take advantage of that, because... They saw the first one not table, but they're not taking these either. Nobody must want them. So
here I would hate an on-summon. This is a pretty clear pick to me. You can't hate a white card because there's 2 white cards, and like you said, it's possible nobody's a white aggro deck. But even if there's 1 white aggro player, you can't really accomplish much with a hate. On the other hand, I don't believe that Kenra Eternal is good in this deck, even with the Torments. It's just not a good 2-drop unless you're really aggressive or taking advantage of zombie synergies.
Yeah, I think I was leaning towards the 2-drop here.
I think it's playable, but I think you have to be like a zombie aggro deck for it to be actively really good, or at least like a red deck with a bunch of Afflict and Reach and maybe. But that's not what Siggy's deck is doing. Siggy's deck's going to have a Sifter Worm in it. It's going to have a Rampaging Hippo. Yeah, I want to have a Rona Stalwart. I want to deal some damage to make my Torments better, but I don't necessarily want my Grizzly Bear in the stack,
Yeah, how do you feel about Dagger of the Worthy? I haven't seen this card get a lot of love, but I definitely was able to use some decent effect early in the format in decks not terribly dissimilar to this one. Cards like Feral Prowler really benefit from it, for example.
Yeah, it's a good combo with Feral Prowler, but... all in all, I think in a team draft, it's unlikely the people you're passing to can use it well, and it would still be medium in this deck. So I like picking up Traveler's Amulet because people often need to splash. That's not a card I necessarily want to pass to them late. And also Siggy might end up wanting to splash, even though he doesn't really have fixing. He has a green deck. He's got Survivor's Encampment and 2 Traveler's Amulets now, so he sets himself up for if he opens a card that he has to hate, maybe he plays it. If he opens a Glorybringer, it isn't pretty, but that's going in this deck.
So you like that second Traveler's Amulet pick over hitting the Unsummon?
So the first time I wanted to hit the Unsummon was because I didn't feel like Kenra Eternal was really offering anything. I don't even think it will end up making his deck, but maybe it will. That time, I don't know what I would have took, but I think that the second Traveler's Amulet is pretty good if you want to splash. And I think it might be good for the opponents because in team draft, you often have to splash.
Yep.
Traveler's Amulet is a card that goes up a lot for me in team draft. If people don't remember way back in our first one, I took multiple, I think 1 or 2 Evolving Wilds pretty highly, and people look kind of confused. And that was because in team draft with all the hating, you often end up here's a good way I can explain this. In individual draft, you shouldn't hate very often, hardly at all, so you should hardly ever need to splash. In team draft, if the best card you're passing to the opponents is better than the card you're taking, you often want to hate it, and that gives you something to splash, so you should splash quite often in team draft. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. This pack is doing it.
Yeah, and looks like we're going to be half aggro, half ramp, and that's just how it goes sometimes in 6-mans.
Do you like this pick? Are you tempted at all by the Scaled Behemoth? Without having any ramp cards in the deck at this point, I'm very, very tempted by this. Like, I don't have them and somebody else does. Those Manalists, that Ritualist, they ended up somewhere.
Right, and that's kind of part of the problem. This deck may want Scaled Behemoth by a little bit more than it wants Sandworm Convergence, but what if you're passing Sandworm Convergence to the opponent you passed a Ritualist and a Manalith to?
I mean, you're not wrong, but, like, Scaled Behemoth isn't a lot less scary in like a lot of matchups. You know what I'm saying? Like it can often do close to as much damage.
I mean, listen, I really like Scaled Behemoth, and I think that's more true in 8-man than team draft. But as the decks get slower, as the decks get sloppier, games go longer, they have a harder time beating a card like Sandworm Convergence. I mean, that card out of a ramp deck in a 6-person team draft could easily be a 10. You know, it is incredibly powerful. This format is pretty slow, and there's a lot of ramp.
Yep.
So if this is me, I'm taking Sandworm Convergence. Now in an 8-man, it might very well be Scaled Behemoth, as you're pointing out. You know, I think Scaled Behemoth probably offers Siggy's deck more than Sandworm Convergence.
That's what I mean. I think that part is clear, at least.
I think right now it's crystal clear. He does have a whole pack left to prioritize ramp cards, since he already has a Sifter Worm and would be getting a Convergence. But I think if you were finishing the draft with this pick, there is no debate that Scaled Behemoth is better in the deck that Siggy currently has than Sandworm. But for me, this is still a clear pick in a team draft. I'm not passing Sandworm Convergence to the opponents. I'm only going to pass that Sandworm Convergence if I think the person I'm passing to can't be green. And green might be the most likely color the person I'm passing to is. We did not see good green cards, like a ton of in Pack 2. We saw a couple, but green's pretty deep. We passed the best card in the pack as green multiple times in Pack 1, including early in Pack 1. Doesn't mean the person took them. You know, maybe they took a different card and sent them right along. But
no, but we were saying Ambuscad was the expected second pick, and then there was Ritualist, and then there was... It's very plausible that the opponent was green the whole way, if not green, getting green every pick.
Right. You know that there's a good chance the person you're passing to is green. So I can't send them a Sandworm Convergence. That's just me.
I do like, if I have to, that all my Torment cards give me some decent positioning against it.
Mm. Okay, so here's a pretty bad pack.
Oof.
There's Trial of Zeal is the best card in the pack.
I'm not really looking to splash that in a one pack of cartouches format.
No, not particularly, but he does have Encampment and Double Amulet. So, you know, if you think there's a decent chance you're passing to a red player, you know, you do want to hate it because I think it's by far the best card in the pack. And then the fact that it is splashable into your green deck with 2 amulets already, play 1 mountain, you've got 3 sources for a nice direct removal spell.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I was just talking about, because in an 8-man, you wouldn't even look at this Trial of Zeal. You would just like take your Soul Stinger and move about your business, right? But in a team draft, you don't want to take Soul Stinger over Trial of Zeal. So you're taking the Trial, and now you end up with something to splash.
No, I mean, I think I would take the Soul Stinger and pass the Trial. If this were triple Amonkhet, I'm not passing that Trial, but like, what, they're going to have 1 cartouche in their deck? I'm not that concerned about, you know, a 3-damage sorcery speed removal spell. Like, it's good, but... You know, I would rather have... A Soul Stinger feels like pretty good for this deck for me. Like, that's exactly the kind of grinding we want to do. I don't think we have too much of that kind of stuff yet, the lock up the ground kind of stuff. Like, I would be into it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we agree on the team draft strategy. We're just disagreeing on the value of Trial without all the cartouches. I mean, I still see it as an efficient removal. But of course, you're right that it's worse than it was, certainly. So this is an easy pick, so we could spend the whole pack talking about the last pick if we want to. So let's see here. I'm green. I get past a pack that has 1 card in it that's way better than all the rest. And it's green. Sweet. A mono green split card.
Yeah. Fortunately, Trial of Solidarity is now passable in this new format, so...
And Trial, I think...
sweat that too much.
I think Trial of Solidarity... of course, I agree with you. Trial of Zeal is worse than it was. But I think Trial of Solidarity dropped by a lot more than Trial of Zeal. I think the reason...
Oh, no question.
Not just the cartouches. White in the old format was all about Catcher's Monument and making tokens and going wide. Now,
and exerting, yeah,
and exerting more of course.
While attacking, exerting while attacking. It got diffuse in its purpose, and yeah, you're right. It's not all about exploiting trial. Plus, no white cartouches, so.
Yeah, and it just doesn't go wide that much now. White is now about attacking in the air, having a few creatures out, maybe a wall blocking on the ground. It's more of a traditional Skies deck and less of a tokens deck.
What a gift this cycling land is. Whew.
Yeah, it's perfect, right? Splash the Trial of Zeal, pick up a cycling land.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be sad about like the Stinging Shot in this deck.
No, Stinging Shot, you would definitely
I would play it for sure.
Agreed.
Yeah.
This deck has problems with flyers. That's another one of those cards like Moaning Wall that just half the time it's great, half the time it's not great. Half the time that's not great, you cycle it.
I'm pretty sure I'm taking this Festering Mummy here. Like, Festering Mummy is one of the cards I sideboard in the most. I don't think any of these other cards are doing anything we like.
Yeah, Festering
and I'm not scared of them either.
Festering Mummy's a good sideboard card. I definitely agree with that. Maybe in the back of your mind, you're a little worried about passing a red cartouche to someone you passed a white trial to. Could be a Boros aggro deck. It's possible.
Good point. But,
I mean, ultimately, that's two different colors. They're probably not both of them. And Festering Mummy is a pretty solid card.
And I'll want to have it against that deck.
Yeah. Were there good artifacts we forgot about?
No, I was thinking about that. I didn't. Oh, Gift of Paradise. So late does the ramp show up, but we don't have really 3-drops. So I don't think there's much. Like, I'm pretty sure we're just taking this.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the next card he's looking at is Wasteland Scorpion. But of course, you should take Gift of Paradise here. You have a Sandworm Convergence and a Sifterworm. Those are two incredible cards to ramp into. So Gift of Paradise is a gift for Michael Sigrist coming this late.
Yeah. Yeah, not to mention making sure he can hit his 4-mana removal spells on 4. Obviously giving him access to his Splash Trial. Yeah.
Whoa, what's he doing?
Looks like he's on the Colossopede. He's worried about his ability to close. I don't think that's
Wow.
Oh, he took the Colossopede.
That's the first pick he's made this whole draft that I vehemently disagree with. You have
What about the hollow one?
Well, I disagree with that one, but it's more of a close but clear. You're not giving up a ton of value. I just don't like it. But I think that gift was so good for Siggy's deck. You have Hippo, you have Sifterworm, you have Sandworm Convergence. You can use your mana. You have that green split card with Flashback. That's a lot of mana to spend, plus it draws cards. I don't know. I don't see that pick at all, Justin.
Yeah, I find it hard to disagree. I think he has, he's a little worried about not being able to, close, I guess, which is a problem, to be fair. We've seen in this sort of team draft format from these kind of green-black and the last format from these green-black dirtily decks. Like, sometimes they can just get into a board stall and not actually be able to close. But, I mean, you've got Sandworm Convergence in your deck, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's true if you don't have Sifterworm and Sandworm Convergence. But a board stall is the dream. You have the card that auto wins any board stall. Nobody's going over the top of Sandworm Convergence.
I mean, that's not precisely true. Like, it's one card. It can be, canceled or whatever. But as a general rule, obviously, you're right.
So this is pretty much junk. But are you scared to pass that cartouche now?
I'm not scared to pass it. But, I mean, that's not to say I wouldn't necessarily take it there if I thought the Supernatural Stamina wasn't going to make my main deck.
Yeah, I mean...
That's a card I liked more in Triple Omnicut by a lot.
Yeah, and Siggy doesn't have a lot of cheap creatures. I think it's pretty surprising for him to play a Supernatural Stamina in this deck. That's a card that's That's a card that's value is directly related to how many cheap creatures you have.
Yeah. All right. Super Nobody with Zombies. None of these cards are making his deck. I guess I might take the Bat, because I can imagine sideboarding it.
Yeah, or the Druid's Deliverance. If you think you're short playables, you can always play it, cycle it. There weren't really powerful artifacts, but there are a couple manaliths running around to kill. So as this draft wraps up, I mean, I understand Siggy didn't see consistent ramp cards, I definitely felt like he took the best card out of the pack, most packs. But, I mean, a couple of the picks, like the Supernatural Stamina and the not taking the gift, taking the Colossopede, it makes it seem like he envisions himself as more of a black-green aggro deck than a ramp deck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think taking the gift or not, I would have viewed myself as either being a ramp deck or not. I think it was just the card the deck wanted. It's definitely, you alluded to this earlier in team draft. You often just don't get the luxury of falling into as nicely coherent of a clear archetype, and you sort of have to make do because people are not cooperating with you or actively interfering with you.
Yeah, definitely. And he already had the Trial to splash, so it's another red source. Like you mentioned, it's double black, so you can always cast those double black 4-drops on curve. I think that, I would have the same deck as Siggy for sure. I would have done roughly the same hate drafting and drafted mostly my deck in his seed. He didn't cast a ton of great cards. He took the Kefnet's Last Word. But, I don't know. If I'm Siggy, those two picks, I definitely take the Wretched Camel. I definitely take the gifts. I don't remember what he took Stamina over, but I see Stamina as a complete unplayable in his deck. How about you?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't main deck it for sure. It's a card you can sometimes sideboard, like against people that have the right kind of removal, stuff like Compulsory Rest. But yeah, no, I would be surprised if that made his main deck. Yeah, no, it's not a good card for him. But I also don't remember what he took it over.
Yeah, I don't think there was a ton. So, okay, so that was Siggy's draft. Are we going to look at someone else's draft or something?
I think we're going to watch a build. Like, we're going to watch Siggy finish Siggy's build, and then I think we're going to go to watch a different build, maybe. Yeah, and then we're also going to get a look at Reed's build. It looks like, so just to see where Siggy's ending up, he is not playing the Eternal. You were right that did not end up making his final deck. It looks fairly straightforward. He got that Spring to Mind the pick after he didn't take the gift, so that's doing a sort of weak impression.
Why isn't he playing the Red Desert?
I can only guess that he didn't notice it.
I mean, even as a splash, that's a card that you play because you can still just cycle it if you drew your one mountain or if you fetched up your mountain with Traveler's Amulet.
Yeah.
And
I assume his sources will allow it, but he needs to play a mountain because Spring, but so maybe he's thinking he can't afford the extra just red source, but yeah, I don't know.
Traveler's Amulet is practically a green-black-red tri-land, so I'm pretty sure he's going to have way more sources than he needs.
Yeah, good point. I wasn't factoring the amulets properly. All right, let's take a look at Reed's build. See what was going on the other side of the table. All right, we have green, blue, mostly. Can't put another qualifier on it because, again, this is one of those team draft decks that doesn't fit super neatly into an archetype. He's sort of a hybrid. It looks like we're back on Siggy's. Here we go. Let's see, those are strategic plannings in his 2 drops. Okay, so he has more of a dedicated ramp deck.
Yeah, this isn't really an aggro deck. This is
no.
I mean, he's got a good curve. It's a
no,
really
he's not
good
at
deck.
all an aggro deck.
But he does have a good curve. When at a first glance we can't tell it's not an aggro deck, and then you look and you see he has 5 2-mana cards that are all reasonable 2-mana cards to play in a ramp strategy. That means it's going to be really hard to run him over. So it's going to be really hard to beat him. I mean, Reed's deck is really good.
Yeah, so it looks like he got the Scaled Behemoth on the other side of the table.
Yeah, like
so maybe the person wasn't green that we were passing to, like we thought they might have been.
Yeah, they're probably not. And also, if you look, Reed has 2 ambuscades. I mean, he has gifts. I don't know if that's the gifts that Siggy passed up.
It looked like he got the best of the ambuscades. It looked like he got the best of the green that we saw, that we all thought might have been going to the left. It looked like a few seats down that might have all gone to him.
Right. So Reed's deck looks really good. Siggy's deck is fine, but I think maybe he stands a decent chance to beat Reed because he has great late game with Sandworm Convergence.
Reed has 2 countervailing wins.
Yeah, and then of course if he has the counter, he can stop it. As you pointed out during the draft, it's pretty much the way to stop it. But I think Reed's deck looks a lot better than Siggy's to me from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, that matchup specifically, I think they're not playing first. Are they playing first? I'm not sure, but either way, if they, it will matter if they have lists for that by a lot. If Reed knows about Sandworm Convergence being the late game plan, and if obviously, Siggy's going to be thinking about counters anyway. It's not like he's going to not know that there might be countervailing wins, but it's a different thing to know that there's two there.
Oh, sure. I mean, when you know that your opponent has a card like Sandworm, you bring in an extra counter. I mean, if you're a slow deck like Reed's that has a pretty good card quality, a pretty good curve, Sandworm Convergence is your nightmare because you can't close out hard and fast. You can't go under it. You can't go over it because it's Sandworm Convergence. But like you said, he has the two counters. So if he knows about it, he'll save his counters. He'll deliberately not even counter a reasonable sized creature unless he absolutely has to. If you don't know about it and your opponent slaps down, what is it, a bitter bow archers, the 5-mana 4/4 or something, yep, you're going to counter that. But if you know they have a Sandworm Convergence and you have a big creature of your own in hand, you're not going to counter that. You're just going to let them resolve
a Sifter Worm that you just would definitely count.
Let's not get crazy here.
It's possible. It's possible. Like all it takes is a big board stall where you can just trade guys with it. Where it's beating into just dudes that are gonna triple block or whatever. Then you just would counter it normally, but you probably just let that resolve if Convergence is in their deck.
Yeah, I'm just making a joke. The real point here, the strategy to know is that you can play a lot different when you have the opponent's deck list and you know everything. Because when you're playing in the dark and you're thinking on turn 3, do I play around impeccable timing? You don't even know if they have one in their pool. Even if you know they have one, you still may just lose that game because their late game is better than yours, let's say, by a lot. And you need to take the risk that they don't have it, right? But when you know somebody's entire deck list, then you're like, oh, they don't really have anything to draw into that's going to swing this, anything I'm scared of. I don't want to let them impeccable timing this creature. I can wait, And that's just a random example that I'm making up on the fly. But the point is, when you really know somebody's entire deck, there's a lot more room to deviate from the best play in a vacuum, let's say.
Yep. All right, we're going to get a look at Alex Haynes' draft. He was to Reed's left in the draft, which is 2 seats to the right of the draft that we were watching. First pick up, strongest cards in the pack are Nimble Obstructionist, Farm, and Torment of Venom.
Sure. And I think the first two are considerably better than Torment.
Sure. I know how you feel about split cards. I'm guessing I know where you're at, and I think I would also take the Farm here. I don't know if I played Nimble Obstructionist yet. What do you think about this pick?
So this is one of the things I'm pretty sure I got right, and I remember one of the first ones where I was taking all the split cards highly. I think Cuneo might have made a comment like, Ben thinks he's getting both halves or something, but you literally are. I mean, that's what Aftermath does. You get to play both halves.
Yeah. Farm.
In my opinion, the split cards, assuming that you can play both halves color-wise, you're basically draw up a card when you play one of them, assuming both halves are real cards. Like, obviously, there's Struggle to Survive, where Survive doesn't do anything, let's say.
Yeah. Taking Farm to Market puts me, everything basically, I'm like, Farm to Market's a great ramp card. It's a good home for it. Obviously, it's a good white-blue card. That's a deck I like a lot. We were talking about that earlier in our experience with that at the GP. I think its next best deck is Ramp, where it's a really, really good deck. And I'm looking at this pack, and I'm looking at Wall of Forgotten Pharaohs, Pharaoh Prowler, and Manolith, all that are firmly in the range of cards I might table out of this pack that would just go great with this pick and set me up great for a Ramp deck.
Yeah, I could totally see Farm or Obstructionist. I wouldn't get mad at a teammate for this pick either way. I think that
sure.
I think for Farm Market to be better than Obstructionist, you have to be able to cast both halves. I think you often will be able to when you first pick it. This is a format with Evolving Wilds and Traveler's Amulet, so even if you're not green, it's really easy if you're a white-red deck to get one island in your deck to cast Market.
Oh, yeah.
So, I could take the Farm Market. I could definitely agree with you on that, but I think you can't go wrong with Obstructionist either. I think it's a close pick.
Sure. This looks like a very easy riddle form with, just nothing's close at all. Is Desert next best?
Just the best card in the pack, and it goes with your first pick. Just perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Desert's the next best card in the pack, but that's an easy riddle form. Completely agree.
All right, now Riddle Form is definitely best in blue-red, so I'm looking at my best on-color card as Aerial Guide here, but I mean, that open fire is calling to me, and I think I'm going to answer.
Oh yeah, blue-red prowess is one of the premier archetypes in this format. It revolves around cards like Riddle Form and Open Fire. Open Fire lets you trigger prowess and instant speed, gives you 3 points of reach for an aggro deck, and is just good efficient removal. I was talking about Trial of Zeal being fine without cartouches. Open Fire is just instant Trial of Zeal. So now you can use it as a trick on their turn, end of their turn, trigger your prowess, instant speed. I mean, it's just a great card.
Counts for instants and sorceries, matter in graveyard, etc., etc. Yeah, just worth noting also that the person we're passing to, if they're paying attention at all, should know exactly, should think they have a good idea of exactly what we're doing, and they would be right, which is just something that's worth bearing in mind.
Sure, and we've passed good black cards. So if I'm in Hane's seat here, I think the person I'm passing to is most likely black. So I'm looking to draft my great blue-red deck that I'm drafting, but I'm looking to keep an eye on good black cards to hate if I'm in his seat.
All right, so we've got several good options for our theoretical blue-red aggro deck. I think the one I like best is Spellweaver Eternal. Just can't get enough of those quality 2-drops, and that is the premier one for the archetype. Not unhappy with Kenra Scrapper. And Inferno Jet's a good card too, but I'm sure you're about to point out this is a situation where we get to take the only blue card, pass 3 red cards, and probably table a better one than we would have otherwise.
Definitely agree with every single thing you said. I don't need to talk. Let's go to the next path.
All right, here we do have a choice. Obviously, we would love to have this Desert, Strategic Planning, and Firebrand Archer, both playable cards in this deck, even the Manticore Elemental. I think you just have to take the Desert because deserts are great here. You have to be able to take them over mediums.
If this is an 8-man, Windmill Slam that blue Desert. But if this is me, I'm taking Oasis Ritualist. That is a key card for the ramp decks. Desert is good, but you do not need a Desert. You're not going to get late Unquenchable Thirst. It's late pack 1. You already don't have one. I would love to have this Desert for my deck, but if this is me in a team draft, I'm not shipping Oasis Ritualist along to somebody who could be green.
You turned me around. I honestly didn't even notice the Ritualist in the pack. I had forgotten what we were doing at all. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, definitely take that Ritualist.
Just too good of a card. If it's Beneath the Sands, take the Desert for yourself and send it along. But a Ritualist is just too good.
Yeah, very easy unsummon here. You absolutely, this is maybe the best unsummon deck. No, this is the best unsummon deck. You absolutely want one. You'll happily play 2 or even 3 as long as, you have enough of the right support. Very, very happy pickup here, I'm sure.
Definitely agree.
All right, here I think Sinuous Striker is enough stronger than Crash Through, even though, we're theoretically doing the spells thing. We even have the Riddle Form, but Sinuous Striker is just value. It's just a good, strong card. Matches up well against, every common or whatever. Right,
and this isn't an 8-man. You can't expect to end up with 4 Spellweaver Eternals, maybe 2 of the red, blue, gold flyer. This is a team draft. People are not going to pass you that many of the same card in the same color that late. Plus, there's just less packs. There's only 12 packs open of Hour instead of 16. So you can't expect to have there is a blue-red deck where Crash Through is better than Sinuous Striker, but you can't expect to end up with it over half the time or anywhere near that. So I like Sinuous Striker. It's the most powerful card. You don't want that to end up in the other blue player's hands. There's a decent chance it's an opponent. Crash Through, no one but you can really make good use out of. You just have to let it go in this case.
Yep, exactly. Next pick, super easy Frontline Devastator. The only consideration here is, if you want to hate the Desert, but we don't have any 4-drops. That's a good sort of top-end creature to the blue-red spells deck, or even a medium creature if you end up going bigger. More of that guaranteed damage we were talking about from Afflict. I think that's the pick here.
Well, yeah, and also the only thing you didn't mention, I agree with everything you said, was there's 2 quality white cards. So as usual, it's not necessarily the best spot to hate. If you're passing to an aggressive white player, you hate the Desert, they get the Unconventional. You hate the Unconventional, they get the Desert. So I would definitely take Frontline Devastator. That's what seals the deal for me.
Yep. Here, the only tension is, this is the same as 2 picks ago, where it's basically you can imagine maybe a nut blue-red spells deck that would rather have a Blur Blades than a Windrake that jumps other guys, but you're not going to get those in team drafts. Or on average, so Aerial Guide's the pick here.
Yep, Aerial Guide is just too much better of a card than Blur of Blades for you to be making those kind of picks.
And here we see going the other way, apparently. Instead of a second frontline Devastator, Siggy decides to step in and start cutting some of this. Or, I'm sorry, we're watching
Pain.
Hane's draft. Hane decides to step in and start coming some of the white that's going around.
Yeah, and
which is
I'm not
reasonable.
Sure.
I don't know if I like the second frontline Devastator in his deck. I think it's going right in, unless his deck ends up insane.
Right.
So I think I lean towards taking that, but
Right, that's what I was going to say. As much as I love a hate draft, these two cards are very close in power level, so I would probably lean towards the frontline Devastator for myself. I understand some of Hane's logic, though, because the zombie deck, he passed on conventional tactics. There have been some of these white cards, and they really they hit, like, all their cards make all their cards better. So when you take away their 2-drop growing zombie, that really powers down their unconventional tactics, for example. So maybe the frontline Devastator is just a generic 4 in his deck. It's fine, but maybe he feels like he's doing a lot more damage to the potential white deck by taking away that mummy.
I think I agree with you. I think I'm a little bit biased in that I saw all the further unconventional tactics eventually go around unwanted, and so I know that's how it's going to end up. But Kane doesn't know that yet, so I think that's a fine hedge here. Pretty easy Manticore. This, and then also an easy Chandra's defeat. Although that's a late solitary camel. Well, just you can't hate a white card out of that pack, and Chandra's defeat's a good sideboard card anyway.
And this is when Hane probably starts to learn that no one might be drafting white, or there might only be one white player and he's not an aggro deck. Because, I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, it wasn't ridiculous to get a Mummy Paramount with 5 or 6 cards left in the pack, but there are 3 cards left in the pack, and they're the 2 white commons, the white 2-drop and the white 3-drop. Like, those are both solid draft cards that make almost every white deck. So for those to come back with 3 cards left in the pack and both be there, if you're in Hane's seat, you're starting to wake up to the fact that there's probably no white creature player. Maybe there's some white ramp deck, some white control deck, but there's probably no little white aggro deck in this pod.
Yep. All right. Fairly weak pack opened here. Oh, there's a puncturing blow over there, which I assume is going to be the pick. He doesn't need. He wouldn't mind either of those deserts. Obviously, we already talked about unsummon, but this is a pretty easy removal spell.
Best card in the pack is in your colors, fits your deck. Just
Wildfire Eternal is a card I saw trick a lot of players early in the format into thinking it was something that they wanted to do. And it took an embarrassing amount of their opponent taking 1 and nothing further happening with their 4-drop for them to wake up to the fact that it was not a real card.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it looks like it has a lot of text and you have to read it, but you don't. I'm going to tell you what it is. 4 mana, 1/4 unblockable. That's the card's actual text. Yeah. And for the record, for anyone wondering at home, that's not a good card. Slitherblade, 1 mana, 1/2 unblockable. Wildfire Eternal, 4 mana, 1/4 unblockable.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a good card
though. Yeah. So okay. So I got this question earlier this week, and I feel like people in general have been kind of meh on our overturning in this format. I think it's like not a bomb, but good. Is that about where you have it?
Yeah, so here's the trick, right? You're not getting a ton for 7 mana, but it's probably going to win the game. You're not getting a great deal for 5 mana, but it's serviceable. You exile some creature with some ability, you get a 5 mana 4/4 with some ability. The split card aspect is really key, because if you're in a tight game and you need an average 5-drop, you've got one. And if you're in a stalemate or a late game and you can spend 7 or 9 mana, then you have a card that wins the game instead of an average 5-drop that probably doesn't swing the stalemate. So it looks not amazing, but because of that split card aspect, I think it's quite good.
Yeah, there's also some decks in this format that can really make use of it. Decks in the cycling to ramp-ish vein. This could often be a very powerful, important card for them. So, it's nice to be able to take that away from the other team.
Here's a pretty interesting pack. So, Consign to Oblivion, best card in the pack. So, I like taking it, especially when the next best cards in the pack are both white. Vizier of the True, Catcher's Avenger are pretty close. I mean, they're pretty close with Consign to Oblivion, too. But nonetheless, it's that scenario we've talked about a couple times during the show, where you accomplish nothing by taking one of the white cards from a white player because they just get a different equivalent quality white card, roughly. Consign, on the other hand, if somebody can cast both halves of it, that's a fantastic card.
Yep, absolutely. maybe you could get countervailing ones back out of this pack. Like, there's not 3 blue drafters, right?
Yeah, there's a decent chance. But so, I mean, that's a really easy, really clear pick. You definitely take Consign Oblivion. This pack is a little... No, it's not interesting. You're just going to take Puncturing Blow.
Yep.
I didn't see that.
Yep.
I don't think we really need to analyze this pack. This is just the easiest Puncturing Blow of all time. Well, let's see. The 5th or 6th pick, there's a great red common removal spell, and there's virtually no other cards in the pack that are close to it. Okay.
Here we're heat drafting a Sandwalla instead of taking another unsummon. I assume he has 1 unsummon and 1 consign, if I've been counting accurately, or does he have 2 unsummons?
I'm not sure, but hate drafting a Sandwalla is not something I expected to see.
Yeah, like, this would be a fine pick to hate draft if there was something here that I was scared of, but I'm pretty sure I'm taking just either the unsummon, or if I feel like I don't want, I have enough of that effect, like the Moloch if I have enough spells, and the Crash Through if I don't.
That's what I was about to say. He's got a Riddle form. I think his spell count's pretty good. Crash Through is a good card for his deck. Nothing special, but Crash Through in his deck is just as good, if not better, than Sandwalla in a green deck. And Thorn Moloch, if he's 3-drop light, I don't really know his curve that well. If he's got a pretty high spell count, which I think he does, 2 Puncturing Blows, a Riddle form, and Open Fire, and if he is 3-drop light, then you grab the Moloch. So for me, this is definitely either Crash Through or Moloch, and I would not even really look at heat drafting.
Great late 2-drop here in the Burning Fist Minotaur. That's a gift.
That is a gift. He's going to Windmill Slam that. It's just the best card in the pack. Great in his deck. A great 2-drop for an aggro deck. Everything you can ask for.
All right, apparently unsummons are growing on trees. Yeah, if he has even 1 desert, and I think that's the amount he has, I think that's what I like with this pick. His deck, his draft is going well. I think we've talked about, or it's been mentioned that this format, one of the reasons, that are so great is because the way the format is now, you just get enough playables most of the time. So you can afford to spend picks upgrading lands into cards, whereas in other formats that might be really expensive. Team draft, that's less true. It's easier to end up short and be punished for those picks. But I think Haim's draft is going well at this point. He's seeing the cards come back that he wants to. What he then sees open. I definitely agree with this pick.
I also agree with this pick. That's a concept I've talked about a few times where, it's not how good is the card, it's how much better is the card than the card it's replacing. And so when you're going to get enough playables anyway, you take something like Strategic Planning out of this pack or Unsummon, that's booting something out of your deck, and how much better is the planning than the card it booted. When you take Ramunap Runes, it's booting Basic Mountain out of your deck. And Basic Mountain number 9, turning into Ramunap Runes, that's a huge upgrade. Because that means if the opponent's at 4 or 2 at the end of the game, you can burn them out with your land, and Mountain is just Mountain. It doesn't do that. And that doesn't sound like something that comes up all that much, but that's a lot of life. Limited revolves around combat, life totals, creatures, and 2 or 4 is 10 or 20% of your starting life total. So Ramunap Runes is just an excellent card for an aggro deck, and I definitely like that pick.
Just at the GP, I was playing a very close game 3 of the 3rd match against a red-blue deck, and I errantly took an extra damage that I didn't mean to off of a Rivulet to cast a flashback, a card that stole his guy, the split card. And I noticed belatedly that I was taking the damage, and it put me to 4 when he was on no cards, and he pulls runes right off the top with 1 desert in play, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. And now, so he's taking Crash Through over Moloch, a pick we were talking about before. So it looks like Alex believes he needs to activate his Riddle forms, and he probably has creatures, probably has some 3-drops. I don't really remember them, but I assume he must have some.
Yeah, and he meant I don't remember how many Molochs there were, but he might be in a position to table at least one of them.
Good point.
Probably is in a position to table at least one of them. Takes another unsummon here as his 3rd bounce spell. I mean, there's no question that Molochs would be great in his deck at this point. Much better than the Striped Riverwinder, which is a card that I normally like.
I know this is kind of extreme, but I'm pretty sure in Alex's deck at this point, I'm taking Crash Throughs over Unsummons. He's got a Spellweaver, he's got a Riddle form, probably a Moloch.
Yeah, just every card. Yeah, I think the Moloch is right here. I think he wants the creature.
And you do want to balance those, for the record. If you assume Crash Through and Moloch in the Moloch deck are pretty close, then you of course you'd rather have 2 of each than 4 of either one. And you draft that way. You try and get a nice balance of 3-drops and a nice balance of Crash Throughs and things to keep triggering them and digging through your deck.
Yep. He has 2 deserts, so the Ceradon's probably better than a Grizzly Bear. Although I would certainly be taking a hard look at my curve while making that pick.
So here's another.
Wow, he gets a whole nother pack. I forgot there was another pack coming. Jeez.
Yeah, and Mouth to
This
Feed
deck's
is a
going to
lot.
end up great.
Oh yeah, Alex's deck is going to be great, and which is good because Reed's deck was great, and Siggy's deck I didn't find to be that impressive. So I like seeing that we've still got balance. Alex and Reed are going to have amazing decks from what we've seen so far. But look at this pack. So Emberhorn Minotaur is considerably worse than Mouth to Feed, and a lot worse than No Catcher's Monument, even though it's not as good as it used to be. Though there also may be no white players at this pot from what we've seen. But anyways, I would take Emberhorn Minotaur because if you take Mouth to Feed, you're just passing the green player, Greater Sandworm or Hooded Brawler anyways.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Emberhorn Minotaur's still a pretty good guy. Mouth to Feed's great, definitely better than those other two cards, but yeah, you can't inflict enough damage for what you're getting. Cartouche of Knowledge, still a great card. This is the right deck for it. He might end up wishing he had more of those Molochs.
Yep, clear and easy pick. The decent cards are gold cards. There's nothing to hate. You just take your Cartouche, move to the next pack.
Really weak pack here. Chooses to de-draft the Fan Bear, which is both clearly correct and we know ended up working out since those cartouches are going to table.
Yeah, easy clear pick. Not just because we saw it already, but because Cartouche isn't very good. There might not even be another red aggro player with all the Molochs tabling. So you should definitely take Fan Bear away from a potential white opponent and count on tabling that Cartouche.
Yeah, here I assume the Sure Shot is making the deck, although his deck might be getting good enough where it's legitimately close. But there's just nothing else particularly great to take here. I think the most tempting card is Gift of Paradise, just because of the potential that it has. We saw, in fact, we know that it ended up, although he didn't take it, if he had it, it seems like it would have been an important key addition to Siggy's deck.
You read my mind too much, Justin. I was going to say that I'm not sure about the Minotaur Sure Shot making his deck or not. It's a fringe playable. Alex probably knows his playable count better than we do. But if he's not short playables and he's not short creatures, I would hate that gift for sure, because that's a powerful card for a ramp deck, and you do not want to pass along a gift to take a replacement level 3 unless you need one.
All right, here we have a defensive draft of some more of the white cards. Obviously, he's seen all the white go pretty late. It's a reasonable bet that nobody's really making use of it, but he's not giving up anything at this point. So exactly. Yeah, the white trial comes back 7th. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting one though. If you're pretty confident nobody's white at this point, are you taking white trial over a Hooded Brawler? I mean, somebody's green.
Fair point. Hooded Brawler's not what it used to be. I think might be the that might be too much lock in on how white trial used to be. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Hooded Brawler's not what it used to be, but it's still good. White Trial got a lot worse. It's still good in the right decks, but it looks to me from Alex's seat like there's no white weenie player in this pod. And so I'm still going to hate that Binding Mummy just like he did because you're taking over virtually nothing. But I'm not going to pass somebody a Hooded Brawler and hate a White Trial when I think I'm hating this White Trial from nobody. So that's a pick I would hate Hooded Brawler. But I agree with the other ones.
These late picks seem very significant to me. I think that Slither Blade is right in the deck, and the Home Kopish might follow it. Those are two great tastes.
Both of those will probably make his deck. And this is
Decision Paralysis, another card that could make his deck.
This is a team draft strategy we haven't actually talked about a lot, but if Luis did this in week 1 with us, when he figured out he was the only blue player in the pod, he started taking any red card over much better blue cards, hate drafting over blue cards, but gobbling up the red cards because you force the other team to hate or the cards get back to you.
Yep. Here, this is an interesting pick to me, actually. The Kenra, if I'm looking at my deck and that's not making my main deck, I think, if I thought there was a chance the person was white, I would just take the Anointer Priest off the table because it's a solid card against me. But yeah, again, there's just nobody's white, so yeah, I guess just take the Kenra or whatever. But I'd be surprised if it made his deck. His deck seems so good right now that I can't imagine that that's gonna make the cut.
His deck does seem really good and better than the Nimble Kenra, but he might need the 2-drop. If he's got all these crash throughs and riddle forms and plays a decent amount of spells, the Kenra is still not good. But if it's your 3rd 2-drop or your 4th 2-drop, then maybe you play it.
And blue cartouche, and I think a red cartouche. Yeah, I think it might actually be good. I think it's actually good.
If you think about it, I don't think he picked up that many 2-drops. He's got a Spellweaver Eternal, and he's got the Burning Fist Minotaur. I didn't see too much else.
And riddle form?
Riddle form, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, he was not heavy on 2s. All right, so pretty good drafts. I'm looking forward. Any predictions?
Well, from what we saw, I think Reed and Hane have much better decks than Siggy, but I mean, anyone's deck can win. Siggy's got Black Removal, Sandworm Convergence, Sifter Worm. It's not like his deck is bad, but I think those cards aren't as good as they look because his deck is not aggressive enough to really power up the Torments, and his deck isn't ramp enough to count on casting Sifter Worm and Sandworm Convergence. I think Reed has a really focused, really nice ramp deck, good curve, the right amount of ramp for his power spells. I think Weaver, he had a Weaver of Currents that's really strong if you're blue-green. I think Hane's deck is the best of the three we've seen so far. Hane looks like he practically has a red-blue eight-man draft deck, I think. I think he maybe just was fortunate. He started blue. He saw all those puncturing blows. I don't know. His deck just looks really good. What do you think?
Yeah, hard to bet against PGO, but yeah, I think I like the decks of Dim Boys a little bit better. That's where my money is. We're going to cut to ads for a minute, and then we are going to have some magic for you, so stick around.
Sweet.
Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events, which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter. Check out Hour of Devastation booster draft leagues on Magic Online. Draft anytime, play anytime. Available now. For more information, visit mtgo.com. HasCon is happening September 8th through 10th in Providence, Rhode Island. HasCon will be hosting a Magic the Gathering Iconic Masters release event, 25th anniversary drafts, Magic spell slinging, and all your favorites from the world of Hasbro. Join the family.